The US Army is watching how Russia fights in Ukraine, and they are taking notes. We received an embargoed report titled How Russia Fights on July 17th from US Army Europe and Africa that was put together by the Foreign Military Studies Office at Fort Leavenworth. In it, leaders detailed what is being learned about how Russia is fighting this war. The embargo lifted on the 21st, so we are good to talk about it now, though I am recording this on the 18th, which is kind of a bad boy move. What it found was that Russia may look disorganized on the surface, but underneath the rusted tanks and chaotic mobilization is a military and a state that has adapted to fight a long, grinding war. They're fusing drones, jammers, artillery, and sheer manpower into a model of modern warfare that's not pretty, but it is effective. This is not the Red Army from the Cold War field manuals. It's something newer and more difficult to define. So the Foreign Military Studies Office, which is tasked with studying foreign threats and operational trends, produced this 170-page report. It's not doctrine, it does not speak for the entire army, but it does offer a clear view into how one part of the US military is interpreting the war in Ukraine and what lessons they think are worth learning. Other parts of the military may be taking different lessons from the same conflict. The Air Force, for instance, may be more focused on the vulnerabilities of GPS-guided munitions than they are with trench warfare, and the Navy is probably more interested in how the Russian Black Sea Fleet was essentially neutralized by a country with barely any ships. Marines are waiting for the book on tape to come out, and the Space Force is still trying to figure out their dress pants. But this report gives us a deep look into what the Army, or at least one component of it, is seeing. Before we get started, we want to thank Odoo for sponsoring today's episode. If you're still managing your business with a mess of spreadsheets, sticky notes, and a patchwork of apps, stop the chaos. Odoo brings it all under one roof with a unified business management system that covers everything from sales to shipping to the shop floor. Odoo gives you full control over inventory and manufacturing from a single dashboard. You can track receipts, deliveries, point of sales orders, and work orders in real time. You'll see exactly what's moving, what's delayed, and what needs attention. You can automate vendor reminders, schedule shipments, scan components with a mobile barcode app, and update worksheets or bills of material on the fly. Whether you're running one warehouse or 10, Odoo keeps your operation fast, accurate, and fully connected. The best part though, everything talks to everything. Sales, e-commerce, CRM, inventory, manufacturing. It's one connected system, not a Frankenstein of bolt-on. So if you're done taping your business together with whatever software you can find, head over to odoo.com. Your first app is free. No trial, no credit card, no nonsense. You've got a business to run, let Odoo make it easier. It opens with a basic but important idea. Russia isn't just fighting with its military, it's fighting with its entire state. Government ministries, civilian industries, universities, and even city governments are being pulled into the war effort. The lines between civilian and military logistics are blurry by design, and that gives them more flexibility and makes it harder for outsiders to know where the war effort ends and normal society begins. One of the examples cited is a bread factory in Tambov, which was just a normal bread factory that would make delicious breads, but is now retooled to build FPV drones. They also mention how towns and cities will raise money for equipment, like vans outfitted to service field ambulances or personal gear for soldiers. For a special military operation, it sure looks like a full-fledged mobilization. The US hasn't fought like this since at least World War II, when companies like Ford and GM were cranking out tanks and bombers, and even typewriter manufacturers like Remington Rand were making 1911 handguns like this one that I have in my personal collection. No big deal. And in some ways, we're no longer built to do that. But the point the Army analysis is making is that Russia's improvisational, whole-of-society approach is working. It's not flawless and it's not really efficient, but it's effective enough to sustain a large-scale war for more than 2 years, while the country's population is only about 148 million people. One of the clearest points in the report is the extent to which drones have become a core part of Russia's war. They are used for, well, practically everything. Reconnaissance, targeting, artillery, fire correction, electronic warfare, direct attack, and damage assessment, among other things. This capability is not limited to elite units. As we see quite often now, regular infantry formations are fielding large numbers of first-person view FPV drones equipped with thermal sights and improvised explosives. Some are modified to carry anti-armor grenades like the RKG-3, while others are designed to drop fragmentation or even thermobaric payloads onto enemy positions. Drone production has been scaled up massively through a mix of formal and informal channels like the bread factory, and of course it includes civilian manufacturing networks. The report highlights how Russian units treat drone losses as routine, and FPV systems are produced and consumed at a pace comparable to expendable munitions. Analysts at RUSI and CSIS have estimated that Russian forces may be using tens of thousands of drones per month. The integration of drones into command and fire support systems is broad. Fixed-wing platforms like the Orlan 10 and 30 are used to conduct wide-area ISR. Once a target is identified, coordinates are passed to artillery units or FPV drone teams. Artillery units usually engage first, and then drone teams often follow up to target any survivors or unconfirmed positions. Subsequent ISR flights are then used to document the effects of the strike. Drones have largely taken over roles that were previously filled by man-forward observers. Their use has made Russian artillery more responsive and flexible, especially in areas where terrain limits line-of-sight engagement. Within the U.S. Army, drone employment has traditionally been more centralized. Most units below the battalion level do not have dedicated drone operators or organic systems, although efforts are underway right now to change that. The report points out that Russia's implementation has developed quickly under combat conditions, and the combination of technical adaptation and operational learning has allowed them to close the gap in a very short period of time. The report also makes clear that electronic warfare is central to how Russia fights, and not just as a support function. Russian forces are using EW to shape the battlefield well before the first artillery shell or drone even hits a target. In doctrinal terms, that means using electronic warfare to set conditions for success, whether that means jamming Ukrainian communications, degrading GPS guidance, suppressing drone operations, and exposing the location of enemy emitters. All of this happens before major kinetic actions even begin. The Army's Foreign Military Studies Office describes Russian EW integration as layered and persistent. Buckle up for this pronunciation because I am going to destroy it, but systems like the Borisoglesk 2 and Lear 3 are deployed at multiple levels down to battalion command and are used to jam UAVs, spoof navigation signals, intercept radio traffic, and feed targeting data into Russia's broader strike system. This shaping role is one reason that Western-supplied precision-guided munitions have struggled in certain sectors. During the winter of 2022 and 2023, reports from RUSI and CSIS describe Russian EW effectively neutralizing the guidance systems on JDAM-ERs, Excalibur rounds, and in some cases, even HIMARS-launched GMLRS. But not all of this capability comes from high-end gear. Russian units are increasingly using cheap, commercially available Chinese jammers that you can even buy on AliExpress, like this $24 one, or this one being marketed specifically for FPV drones. Many civilian drones, like a lot of the commercial off-the-shelf ones that we see a lot of in Ukraine, operate on 2.4 or 5.8 GHz bands, which are the same as Wi-Fi and what many of these cheap jammers target. I have here something called a hack RF, which can generate any signal up to 6 GHz by simply setting the frequency and hitting start. This can be bought on AliExpress and lots of other online vendors, and it's relatively easy to get and set up. You can really go hard into the antennas and stuff like amplifiers and all this other thing, so it's really not that hard. But I will say, legal note time, in the US, interfering with radio signals is illegal. Under FCC Title 47, Sections 302A, B, and 333, penalties include fines up to $112,500 per violation and up to 1 year in prison. These jammers are being used in Ukraine because there's no regulatory oversight in a war zone. Don't do this in the United States. We have regulatory oversight, or what's left of it, and if you make the wrong people mad, you're gonna go down pretty hard. The report also discusses leadership, discipline, and training across Russian units, a part of the war that's easy to overlook when focusing on drones and artillery. Russian formations vary widely. Some, like airborne and Spetsnaz units, are better trained and retain a core of professional cohesion. Others, especially mobilized conscripts and penal units, which are just prisoners they pluck out of jail and say, "Go do this and you'll be free," they mostly end up dying, they suffer from poor morale and leadership. But according to the Army's analysis, even these lower tier units are improving. Training pipelines have become more efficient. Frontline cohesion increases naturally over time, especially when and if units survive long enough to build experience. And while Russia still lacks a strong NCO corps like the US has, junior officers have adapted with an ad hoc leadership structure. This is not a highly disciplined or well-managed force, but it's a learning force, and that's what makes it dangerous, along with their complete disregard for human life, especially their own soldiers. They also dig into the fact that Russia is now fighting with an artillery-first doctrine and not maneuver warfare. They've created Army artillery groups, which are formations designed to integrate long-range strike capability with drone ISR. These groups are often the first to engage, not the last. The model is simple. Drone spots target, artillery fires, and another drone confirms destruction, and then you repeat. This kind of massed fires model contrasts with the US Army's traditional emphasis on maneuver, speed, and initiative. And the Army is aware of it. New doctrine and acquisitions are starting to tilt back toward volume of fire, not just precision strikes. The side that can sustain accurate fire over time, especially with drones doing the spotting, has the advantage. This brings into sharp focus our ability to produce ammo, something that has gotten a lot of attention in the last few years, because it is obvious that at current levels, we could not sustain a full-fledged fight for very long. This report is not a rewrite of Army doctrine, but it does reflect growing concern that the next war may look a lot more like Ukraine than it does Iraq or Afghanistan. And across the Army, there are signs that those lessons are starting to drive change. One of the most immediate areas of reform is in training. In 2024, the Army began incorporating small drones, counter-drone tactics, and low-visibility concealment techniques into enlisted training pipelines at Fort Moore, Fort Jackson, and Fort Leonard Wood. Soldiers are now being trained to operate in environments where overhead drone surveillance is constant and where signature management, which is hiding from sensors that can detect like your radios or any little thing, is as important as traditional camouflage. This shift came after Army leaders reviewed battlefield footage from Ukraine and realized that many standard US infantry movements would likely be spotted and targeted within minutes. That realization is now reshaping how the Army trains its force. At the modernization level, there's a lot of programs happening, but there's two key ones that are helping to retool the Army's ability to fight in contested, high-tech environments. Project Linchpin is developing AI-enabled targeting pipelines to speed up kill chains, automate threat detection, and prioritize targets from ISR feeds. Titan nodes are mobile command and control platforms designed to integrate satellite data, drone video, radar tracking, and battlefield sensors into a single picture for fires and maneuver units. These initiatives are part of a larger effort to adapt to a world where battlefield transparency is increasing and decision speed is more important than ever. Meanwhile, like we mentioned before, other branches are interpreting the same war in different ways. The Air Force is dealing with the implications of GPS-guided munitions failing in contested electromagnetic environments. That's forcing a rethink of how long-range strike works when satellites and data links can't be trusted. The Navy is watching how Ukraine has used drones and long-range missiles to push back the Russian Black Sea Fleet into near irrelevance, despite having no functioning navy of its own. That reality is shaping thinking around ship survivability, autonomous surface vessels, which we have a video coming out on very soon, and logistics under fire. Each service is drawing different conclusions, but there's growing agreement that the battlefield is evolving faster than legacy institutions can adapt or have been adapting, and that the tools and tactics that worked over the past 2 decades may not hold up against a peer adversary that's willing to trade blood for adaptation. Russia's way of war is disorganized, it's brutal, and it's very costly, but it's also proven to be adaptable. And that's the part we should be paying attention to. Because if this is what Russia can do under sanctions, international isolation, and internal dysfunction, imagine what a more capable adversary with better logistics and leadership could accomplish with the same toolkit. I wrote the script and Savvy edited the video. I wanted to give a special thank you to U.S. Army Europe and Africa Command, which sent me this embargoed report, which was extremely helpful and honestly made the video possible. By the time this comes out, the report will have been published, and you'll be able to go to taskandpurpose.com to read the article that we will most definitely have on this. At least we'll have the video article that you can read, and it'll be linked there. So go check that out once it's up. Also, I'm once again wearing this grenade shirt. It's the patent for the Mark II grenade. You can buy this at store.taskandpurpose.com, and if you put in code ACTUALLYWATCHED, you will get 10% off. The shirts are only like $25. They're honestly really comfortable. I went with the soft style shirts for these. They're soft, the print's real great. So if you want one, go check it out. Other than that, I'm Kyle, your friendly ginger producer man. You are all dismissed, and I will see you next time.